Alrighty, it is October 27th. On this Monday afternoon, we're at 12:02 and we are going to get started with today's informational session. Hi everyone, my name is Shannon O and I'm part of the Human Resources team here at the County of San Mateo. I'll be moderating today's informational session for the Human Trafficking Prevention Analyst recruitment. We're really excited you're here to learn more about this opportunity to support the county's effort in preventing and addressing human trafficking through data, policy, and community collaboration. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. At any point that you have to drop off, that's totally fine. This session is being recorded, so you can revisit this later if needed. And also, please feel free to drop your questions into the chat at any time. We have a Q&A segment towards the end of today's info session, so I'll help direct those questions over to our panelists. I'd like to get started by having Ryan and Chet, our panelists today, introduce themselves. We'll go ahead and start with Ryan and then Chet.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Shannon. It's a great opportunity for me to be here and talk about something that I'm really excited about, this new opportunity within the county. So a little bit about myself. I've been in law enforcement for 31 years. I started out here in San Mateo County working for the San Mateo Police Department, worked there for many years, and then eventually worked my way up the ranks, and I became a police chief in the town of Tiburon up in Marin County. And got a totally different experience in a different county and a different way of doing things. And then back in 2023, I came back to San Mateo County to serve under the sheriff at the time as an assistant sheriff and help focus on helping to modernize the sheriff's office. And so I had an opportunity to work there. And now I had the distinct pleasure to kind of get in a new role focused on human trafficking. And so this new role takes all the years of experience I've had in law enforcement and kind of synthesizes it all, brings it together to coordinate law enforcement efforts in the county. So it's really kind of a unique position because you're working with so many different law enforcement agencies. And that's what I'm doing now, and I work under the district attorney's office within what we call our Bureau of Investigation. So excited to be here. Thanks again, Shannon.
Hi, my name's Chet Overstreet. I'm one of the recruiters here in the county. I work in human resources, and I'm actually a supervisor, so a talent acquisition supervisor. I am facilitating this recruitment process for Ryan in the DA's office. I've been with the county for about 18 years. I have actually a educational background in clinical psychology, and I worked in that field for about 10 years and then really needed a career change and found that it was a pretty nice transition into human resources. I came into the county as an intern and then was hired as a management analyst in talent acquisition. So I've been a recruiter now, again, for 18 years, supervisor part of that time for about the last 9 years. So yeah, we are very excited to be here. Welcome. Thank you for being here, Shannon. Thank you for hosting. Ryan, thank you for joining. This is a pretty exciting recruitment and a really interesting, exciting opportunity for the county. Thank you.
Thank you both for your introductions. We'll be hearing from Brian on the department, the position overview, and the program itself. And then Chet will join us and talk us through the recruitment and selection process. So without further ado, I'll hand things over to Ryan to kick us off on an overview of the department and the Human Trafficking Prevention Program. Ryan?
Yes, thank you, Shannon. So the district attorney's office is primarily responsible. It's a large agency within the county. Primary responsibility of the district attorney's office is to represent victims of crimes primarily, and to ensure that justice is served for those victims. We are the district attorney is a prosecutorial arm of law enforcement. So oftentimes what happens is when law enforcement makes an arrest, that will go to the district attorney's office, and it's the job of the district attorney to decide which cases to prosecute. And that comes in lots of different forms. But again, the primary role there is to ensure that the rights of victims of crime, that those folks get justice, and that primarily someone that's an offender gets an appropriate amount of, an appropriate punishment, if you will, but really centered around how do we correct the behavior and move forward. And so I think that that's really centric to what we do at the district attorney's office. The Bureau of Investigation is about 30 people or so within it's a branch of the district attorney's office. And within that branch, we have very experienced investigators, most of whom are former law enforcement officers with a lot of experience, who are very skilled at investigations. And the types of investigations that they do range from government corruption to uses of force involving law enforcement officers in the county. So very, very diverse set of investigations. So it really truly is an investigative branch. Where I fit into this picture is my primary role is directing our efforts as it pertains to human trafficking. And it kind of was a natural place for this position to fit because, again, not only does the district attorney's office ensure the rights of victims by prosecuting, but we also have victim services programs. And so that's another branch of the DA's office where these folks ensure that when victims come into our system, that they get the services that they need. And so having the human trafficking element there is kind of a perfect fit because we have those resources at our disposal. So this position is very much about coordinating. We have 16 different law enforcement agencies in this county. They all vary in size, they vary in population, they vary in demographics, the jurisdictions that they serve. We know that San Mateo County is a hub for human trafficking, as is several other counties across California. One of the things that makes San Mateo attractive for folks that engage in human trafficking is the fact that we're centrally located. We have bridges that connect us to the East Bay, and we're kind of right in between two major metropolitan cities, both San Jose and San Francisco. And it's even more so of a concern right now because in early next year, we have the Super Bowl coming to town, as well as World Cup soccer. And the concern with those is as those events come into town, it causes a massive influx of tourism. And along with that tourism also comes a demand for both labor trafficking and sex trafficking. And there is a distinction between the two of those. Labor trafficking is basically coercing people or forcing people into unfair labor conditions where they're basically forced to work to pay off some type of debt. And that could be that maybe perhaps they were brought across the border illegally and now they're kind of indentured servants to the person that trafficked them. We do have labor trafficking in this county. We know it's here. The sex trafficking we see is a little bit different. It's oftentimes they do target women, although we have seen men being trafficked as well. But the primary target is women in between the kind of age group of, believe it or not, 12 to kind of 15, 16 years old. And they often target young girls that are in the foster care system, et cetera. So that's just kind of an overview. And we know that this is prevalent because being a longtime law enforcement officer myself, once upon a time, I was working in a unit where we saw this quite frequently. And I think as a whole, not only in our county, but elsewhere, we've become a lot more informed to realize that oftentimes women that you see engaging in prostitution are really just truly victims of sex trafficking. They're doing this because it's the only option that they have to ensure that they have a roof over their head, et cetera. So our goal with this position is to do everything we can in this county to connect all of our law enforcement resources and truly combat human trafficking. Kind of an overview of this position. This is a new position, which makes it so exciting because there's so many different things that comes along with a new position. And whoever serves in this role will very much kind of dictate what this position may potentially look like in the future. So that's kind of the exciting opportunity in all of this. A lot of it's going to be involving conducting research, right? Research on human trafficking, helping to connect data. One of the biggest challenges we have is that all these different law enforcement agencies don't always speak to each other. So how do we get accurate data? The infrastructure's there. We just need somebody that knows how to connect those dots. So it's analyzing data, right? It's looking at the data and saying, hey, we're basically looking at the data that's available to us. Where are we seeing the greatest existence of human trafficking in our county? What does it look like? And how does that guide our actions, right? And then a lot of it will be presentations. The community is very interested in this work and they want to know more about it. And that's important because the more we let the community know about this, a lot of folks don't realize that human trafficking is literally hiding right in front of their face. It happens right in front of our face, and that's why people miss it. And so the more that we can get that information out there to community groups, the better. And I see this person as an extension of me because I can't be in every place at all times. So someone that's able to present some of this information to the community, you know, representing us at particular meetings, representing this particular initiative at different meetings. You'll have a lot of time to work with the board of supervisors and potentially other elected officials in other cities as we present information and work with them to kind of push this initiative forward. And then really kind of working on a lot of special projects. I mean, I think the exciting part about this role is a lot of it is going to be kind of adapting as we go along. The core duties will remain the same, but the way in which those core duties are carried out will change as we progress and go further into this. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And then you know, Shannon, if you'd like me to talk about kind of the ideal qualities I'm looking for, I'm happy to do that, or whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing that background and context. I hope that helps our viewers that are watching to better understand the program that Ryan is running. So I think it's really powerful for me to hear this because the county is taking such a proactive approach to human trafficking prevention, not only through law enforcement, but also through, like you said, education, data, research, and community partnerships. So I love what you touched on there is that this individual would be an extension of you, Ryan. Ryan, can you tell me about the timeline in which you're trying to hire this individual?
Yeah, so I think we're looking to do interviews in the latter part of November. So and then, you know, ideally, just based on there will be a background process involved because it is likely that a very strong likely possibility that this person will be at times working with what we might consider law enforcement sensitive information. So information that is not otherwise shared outside of law enforcement. So that usually requires a background. So once the interviews are done and you go through a bit of a background, and sometimes people get scared of backgrounds, there really is nothing to be scared of there. It's just a process to ensure that the individual that we hire, you know, is the type of person or doesn't have any big, humongous red flags that would otherwise preclude them from having access to sensitive information. So after the background, you know, it could be, realistically, probably sometime in maybe the beginning of the new year, you know, by the time they actually get into the seat. And some of that's kind of a plus or minus, and it really just depends on how quickly they can get through a background and how quickly we get through the onboarding process. So that's the timeline in a nutshell. But I think we're looking at the 20th and 21st, or roughly around those dates, Chet, right, for the interviews.
That's correct. Yeah. November 20th and 21st.
So
Thank you both.
That's coming up. So that's the timeline.
Thanks, Ryan. Can you help paint a picture for someone that's interested in applying in terms of what the day-to-day would look like? I understand that the position combines both analytical and community-focused work, which is unique in itself, right? So can you kind of touch on what a typical day would look like?
Yeah, I will tell you again, the part of fun of it is that, you know, no 2 days will probably be the same, right? A lot of it will be, hey, you know, can you get me some information? We need some information data from these law enforcement agencies. Can you reach out to the 16 law enforcement agencies in the county? Here's some point of contacts. So, that will be an opportunity for them to establish some good working relationships with whether it be crime analysts or other folks within those law enforcement agencies to get that information. So can you help get information on that? It can be something like working with, we have a lot of victim service providers in the county. And a lot of the work we're doing right now that I'm trying to do on my own that I believe will continue even when we have this new role is really forging those relationships where all these different victim services come together and we all work uniformly when it comes to human trafficking. Because one of the biggest challenges we have is we have a lot of law enforcement agencies that actually want to go out and do proactive things to try to catch people involved in human trafficking because they believe strongly in this. But sometimes we don't always have the victim resources readily available. So I really see this person as a connector with the victim resources, going to meetings with them, regular meetings with them, so that we ensure that our victim resources, that our victim service providers have what they need from us as the county in order to operate and continue to provide that as needed service to victims when we need it immediately. Because what we know with human trafficking victims, if they don't have an alternative immediately available to them, it's very discouraging. It's much harder for them to want to cooperate on anything that can get them out of their situation. So I see that as kind of a day-to-day, a lot of collaboration with those victim services. A lot of special projects. It might be, hey, I've got to do a presentation for city council in a couple days. Could you come up with a really persuasive, short and concise PowerPoint that I can show to a group of elected officials. It'll be preparing reports. Right now, it'll change, but right now I do weekly reports for the Board of Supervisors, updating them. I foresee that changing probably more to like a monthly or maybe bi-weekly, monthly, or maybe even quarterly type reporting system. And I see this person really kind of being my advisor, right? And helping me to shape those and help me to shape the most informative reports that can be concise and really help an elected official with a high level overview of the work we're doing. So working on projects like that, helping me to acquire funding and money, potentially looking at potential grants and funding that's available through the state and the federal government. So again, the opportunity here is it's so multifaceted that I think you're just going to get experience in doing a lot of different things. And I don't know that any 2 days will, some days it'll be a little easier. There won't be as much stuff going, and there'll be some days when everything's coming down all at once. And so I think that's where flexibility will really come in. I can see this person preparing public presentations. And that could be something, like I said, on the day-to-day, they might be preparing a public presentation that's going to be in a week or so, right? So, but a lot of it, right, is going to be doing that research, right? Getting the information we need. One of the things, a prime example, right now, we know that we have a bunch of illicit massage businesses in our county. So these are massage businesses that are fronts for sex trafficking. And oftentimes they traffic women from out of the country. They live in these establishments and they're trafficked. And we're going to need somebody that can help me collect that data. So right now we've put out kind of a directive to our law enforcement agencies. Hey, we really need your help. We need you guys to help us. We got intelligence information that showed us that we had about approximately 30 massage establishments within our county in different jurisdictions that are engaged in illicit activity. And the hard part for me is constantly having to follow up with those agencies to get that information so that I can report out on it that, hey, here's where the agencies are at. This agency has shut down 3 of those businesses and they did another operation on this one. So that's an example of something that this person could be tasked with doing. And then to that point as well, when we do an operation somewhere in the county, like a sting operation, there might even be an opportunity where we can bring this person out to kind of sit in the analytics room and see how we do things. Because there is a room where we have analysts and other folks that are usually involved in these operations. So again, it's it's just an opportunity to really get the full scope of what we do by kind of being exposed to it all and actually doing a lot of different things.
Thank you, Ryan. I think that gives a great picture of the impact and variety this role offers. I'd like to invite Chet to share what candidates can expect from the recruitment and selection process. And Chet, if you can also offer some tips for submitting a strong application, that'd be really nice too.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Ryan. Um, as Ryan mentioned, we're planning to do interviews the week are on November 20th and 21st. I think we'd advertised as the 19th and 20th, but we needed to modify those dates. What we have listed in the job announcement, we try to stay close to as much as possible. So the recruitment will close next Monday on November 3rd at midnight, 11:59 p.m. So if you're planning to apply, please get your application in before the deadline. We cannot accept late applications. That week, November 5th and 6th, will be our subject matter experts will be reviewing all of the applications that come in, and we'll be scoring those basically, evaluating them and the applications who achieve a passing score. They get screened in. Those applicants will be invited to interview again on November 20th and 21st. Then we're planning interviews, first round of interviews on the week of I'm sorry. Then finalist interviews will be probably the week of December 1st. As Ryan mentioned, whoever is selected will go through backgrounds and probably the position will start early in the new year, as Ryan mentioned as well. On the application, we ask that you complete the application, list your address, your educational experience, your work experience, and then at the end of the application, there's five what we call supplemental questions. Those are an opportunity for candidates to really write a narrative, really kind of flushing out or filling out their work experience, work and education experience. The first one is really tell us how your education and experience have prepared you for this position and why this position is of interest. The second one is asking about any research experience that you've had. The third one is asking about data analytics, your experience working with data. The fourth one is about collaborating with law enforcement. Again, these are the things that Ryan has talked about in terms of the position. We just want you to describe those again in a narrative format, working with law enforcement and also working with confidential information. And then any experience writing analytical and written reports, and then making oral presentations. So the supplemental questionnaire is really important in the screening process. The subject matter experts will review those carefully. All of the applications are read carefully. I do an initial screening as the recruiter. I call it the pre-screening. Applicants that don't meet the minimum requirements would be screened out by me. If an application is really poorly produced or created, that would get screened out as well. But the bulk of the applications do go to the subject matter experts for review. Again, they're scored or assessed, evaluated, and then those applicants are invited to interview for the position. So in terms of Shannon's question about tips for creating a strong application, you definitely want to take your time. There's still a week left. We try to have these info sessions sort of in the middle of the recruitment. So people still have time to create a strong application. You shouldn't have typos in the application. And then in terms of the narrative, responses to the narrative, the supplemental questions, you really want to spend time writing about how your education or how your education and experiences prepare you for the position, obviously. Unfortunately, AI has become a real tool for people that are answering these narrative questions. The downside of that is, as I read applications, all of the narrative responses begin to sound very familiar. In fact, I was reviewing applications last week and I'm like, oh my God, these last 5 applications, the first sentence to the answer to this narrative question were exactly the same. And so it really, I think, does you a disservice in terms of just relying solely on AI to help you in this process. We know it's a lot of work to apply for a county job. But we I guess require or ask for these narrative responses because it really does gives the screener more information. So my recommendation would be if you're not a strong writer, if you're going to use AI, that's fine, but then you need to customize it, you need to make it fit, you need to make it sound like your language, right? That's one thing we talk about, especially in the interviews. We don't want to hear rote information. We sort of want to hear you talk from your heart, speak from your heart, talk from sort of who you are, right? I mean, Ryan is looking for a really strong partner, right? Collaborator in this position. You're not just working for him, you're working with him. And I think that's really important to think about. So, you want to present yourself in these narratives in such a way that it's really compelling, that it's not just cut and pasted. Um, and if you do use AI and don't fill in the put employer here box, you will be screened out, right? You have to put some effort into this because this job is going to be a lot of work, exciting work, as Ryan's described. But this is your first chance to make an impression, and it really needs to be a solid impression. So please take your time, right? And answer the questions thoughtfully, answer them really kind of from your heart, and just spend the time necessary to make a good first impression. Similarly, I think if you're invited to interview, the interviews typically are about 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, maybe longer, 35 to 40. We have scripted questions that we ask, and they're behavioral based. Give us an example of a time when, maybe tell us about a time when you managed a project, tell us about a time when you collaborated with other organizations, those kinds of things. Again, you really want to think about what your experiences have been, and then be able to really communicate about those. And I think in this position, unless you've worked in law enforcement, you may not have direct experience. So it's really important to talk about the transferable skills that you have. I think a lot of people probably will have some research experience, maybe experience working with data, but you really want to tie those experiences into this position. Um, I mean, just to be transparent, we've received 75 applications to date. That's a lot of applications. Some of those won't really meet the minimum qualifications. Some will. So again, it's going to be competitive, and you really want to spend time doing a good job. I don't say that number 75 to discourage anyone. We want your applications. This is a really important position for the county, and a great opportunity for someone. I mean, just imagine the kind of experiences that you'll have coming out of this position. So, again, we're excited. I mean, it's not the greatest subject matter area necessarily, but we are excited about the opportunity to really support, the residents of the county, to really be sure people are getting the protection that they need. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chet. I always find this segment really helpful for folks that haven't applied to county jobs before, or at least a County of San Mateo job. Chet is the first person to screen your application, and then it goes to the subject matter expert. So I hope that you take some of the tips he gave, some insights on how to make your application stand out, and also I hope you have a better idea on what to expect during the interview process if you're asked to be part of the interviews. Now that we've covered the program, the role, and how to apply, we're going to go ahead and move over to the Q&A portion of today's session. I do see some questions coming into the chat, so we'll go ahead and start with those. Let's see. Just a reminder, please drop your questions into the chat, and I will go ahead and direct them to our panelists. Unfortunately, they can't see you all, but I'm able to see your comments. We have a question from Janice. What are some metrics that the department uses to measure success or projects? Or what are some key goals in the next year or few years? Ryan?
Yeah, great question. I think the metrics, right? I think the metrics are number one, how many proactive enforcement activities are we doing in the county? Like how frequently, because our county, we can separate it in north, central, and south. How frequently across the county, north, central, and south, are we doing proactive investigations to try to recover what we would call human trafficking victims? We want to find the victims. We want to get them into services. So of keeping track of those, there's a subset of metrics in that. How many victims followed up with the victim services that we provided on some level? that would be something that we want to track because, again, it shows us the effectiveness of the victim services model that we're using and where we need to tweak that. How many of these cases are actually resulting in prosecution? Because, again, if we do not hold the traffickers accountable, they will continue to engage in this because it is an extremely lucrative business. As sad as that sounds, it makes them a lot of money. And so we need to, prosecution is necessary to discourage the behavior. So that, again, how many cases do we get in the county? Whether it was from a proactive operation or one of our agencies stumbled across a human trafficking victim, which what oftentimes happens, right? So one metric is how many victims are we recovering? How many of them are taking advantage of services and keeping track of that? And this person is going to help us figure out a way to collect that data because right now there is no system or aggregate system that collects all that. There's probably disparate systems throughout the county that have it, but this person's going to help pull all that together. Right. And then how many of them are leading to prosecution? That's easy because we're attached to the district attorney's office, so we can get that information. Right. So that's one piece of this puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is, how frequently are we getting education out to what we find is that there's a lack of education around this for first responders, whether they be police officers or medical first responders. So how frequently are we getting training out there? That's a metrics. And how well attended are those trainings? And what's the feedback that we're getting on the training in terms of, is it giving the people the information they need, right? So in order to be effective. And then doing training for like hotels and other hospitality industry. And there's so many other areas, hospitals and schools and so many other places where you could potentially touch human trafficking victims, excuse me. And are we reaching out to all those different people and getting training and awareness out to them, right? So that would be another metrics. And what does success look like? Well, really success is when all of our agencies are working together collaboratively to address this problem. That our agencies are trained, they know what to do when they have a human trafficking victim, they know what to do with it. And that they're taking it a step further by using some of their specialized teams to proactively go out and try to address this problem by operating by conducting sting operations. So what was, Shannon, there was another part to the question. Was there something, a different part, or do you think that we covered it?
I think you covered it. The second part of the question was, what are some key goals in the next year or few years?
Oh, well, I can tell you that the key goal is, right, getting all these agencies to work together, having robust victim services in the county that are built up, a network for victims, and ultimately leading to a sustainable solution where we are collaboratively working together on a regular basis and addressing human trafficking regularly, as opposed to just reactively when it kind of rears its head.
Right. Thank you, Ryan.
Shannon, can I ask a follow-up to that question just about the position? So Ryan, this is a limited term position. It's
Yes.
funded through the end of through December 2026. So are there plans for that? Maybe it will depend on how things go if the position gets refunded, or what can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think at this point, right, there's a lot of unknowns. We've had this position in the past, and some of it's going to, some of it is, seeing how well is this role working in the county, and are we hitting the intended goal, which is right to get us to recover as many victims as possible. So I think that the county's really going to analyze this position, and see, are we meeting the metrics and are we getting the most bang for the buck for the position. So I think that lies an opportunity. I think I look at that as a kind of a neat thing because it might provide some people an opportunity to try something different, to get some different experience that potentially could lead into whether this position gets continued. You've got your foot in the door with the county. You've learned about how the county operates. So if the position doesn't get funded permanently, I think it could lead to potentially other opportunities for somebody with the experience alone. But I think a lot of it's just going to be based on how do things look over the next 6 months? Are we getting out there? Are we, getting in front of the community? Are we getting more awareness and more information out there? And are we successfully recovering victims of human trafficking in our county, whether it be labor and sex trafficking? So they're going to be looking at those. That's why the metrics are so important, because right, the metrics and the data is going to help to guide, um, you know, this position. I mean, a lot of the work is it can't always be captured by data, right? It's connecting with victims. It's the work you do behind the scenes to make things successful. But data is a currency, and so we need to make sure that we have those numbers that show how our work is leading to something. So that's the best I have on it for now. I know that the county has a significant interest in wanting to see this succeed, but since this is so new and different, right? They wanted to have the opportunity to evaluate it first to see how they might tweak it moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you,
That's helpful.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chet. That was a great follow-up question. While I have you here, Chet, we have a question from Francisco in the chat. If an applicant includes a cover letter, will it be included in the applicant's score, or will the questionnaire be the only part of the application that is scored?
That's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, the supplemental, whatever you submit becomes part of the application packet. It would be considered, it's not scored like the narrative responses are, but it is kind of part of the whole packet. So, I mean, I would say you can include a cover letter. It's not required in this case. Sometimes it is for recruitments. So it's considered, but it would not be scored.
Thank you, Chet. Natalie is asking a similar question. Are you looking for us to include supplemental documents in the application, or would you like us to provide those during the interview process?
Yeah, so thank you. That's a really great question. You don't need to really provide anything except for in the body of the application, the county employment application form, your education background, your work history background, and then the responses to the narratives. If you want to attach a cover letter and resume, you can. Those would be part of the packet, but again, aren't scored necessarily. We don't need other attachments, like you don't need to attach a copy of your diploma. I mean, if there's something that's relevant, you can talk about it in the narrative. So you don't need to attach a lot of extra things at this time. If we need something, if the subject matter experts, the interviewers need to see something, then we'll let you know that in advance of the interview. Great
Thank
question.
you, Chet. Thank you. We have another question from Natalie regarding the screening process. Are you going to be doing a keyword search on the applications to determine eligibility or ranking?
That's a really great question as well. Yeah, we don't do a keyword search. I mean, not using AI or any sort of computer generated system. All of the applications are basically hand read or read. I don't know if that's the right word, but human read perhaps. So we spend a lot of time with applications because we want there to be, I guess, we want to put human back in human resources. I mean, part of my job is reading through these 75 applications, and I have to plan my time to do it, so that I have time to review them carefully. And I go through them sometimes 2 and 3, 4 times because I don't want to miss something. I want everyone to have a fair shake. I mean, that's one reason we do things the way we do in government is that, everyone should have a fair and equitable opportunity to apply for a government job. And so we spend a lot of time with applications. To be sure people are kind of getting a fair shake's not the best way to say it, maybe, but that everyone is being considered, right? So there's not an initial pre-screening, a machine pre-screening. It's all done by hand.
Right. And it's again, it's not AI that are reviewing these. It's Chet
Right.
himself,
Yeah.
and then Ryan's subject matter experts. In terms
Chet's
of
better than AI.
oh, Chet is better.
Yeah.
Chet
I may be
GPT.
more, I might be more original, but
Love that.
thank you, Ryan.
We have a question for you, Ryan, regarding the tools that this analyst would use. You talked about presentations and the data. So what type of software or programs would this individual be working on?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And, obviously we have the full plethora of tools available through Microsoft here in the county. And, I'm very open-minded to other tools that they might have experience with, as long as it's something that I can argue and there's funding for it. I'm a very open-minded. I'm glad Chet said that I'm looking for a partner, because this isn't so much me telling someone what to do. It's more partnering with somebody. That's my leadership style. I like to empower the people that work with me. And I like to treat them as a partner, as opposed to a subordinate. So if there is a tool that they think is a great tool for creating a PowerPoint or something, we're certainly open to some of those things. But we do have a plethora of tools available. In addition to that, one of my goals is to make sure, that's part of the background, they'll have access to some of our computer-aided dispatch systems for the county, things that allow them to explore and pull kind of information from computer-aided dispatch from the other law enforcement agencies in the county. And again, thus is that need for the background check, right, to make sure that this is someone that can handle using that. So I think some of that will be limited, but they would have access to that. And then here within the district attorney's office, we have some tools. We have a really cool tool that allows us to extract information from reports, extract information from jail calls and things of that nature. I don't know that we'll be using so much of that, because again, the role isn't so much investigatory in nature. We have folks that do that, right? The role is more support in nature and supporting those investigative efforts. But that could be a possibility, right? So there are some tools to that extent that would help. But I see primarily, using Word, Canva, things like that for presentations.
Right.
And then, the other added side of having access to some of our internal computer systems that would allow them to help collect and aggregate, get data.
Thank you, Ryan. Great questions to the folks in the chat asking about the software. We had a few questions about that. We have a question for Chet. And by the way, I sent the link in the chat for the link to apply and learn more. It's our official job announcement on governmentjobs.com. But Chet, could you talk about the minimum experience related requirements of an applicant?
That's a great question as well. I'm just looking at the job announcement right now. Interestingly, for a lot of our county jobs, there's not necessarily a minimum requirement. What we say is a typical way, any combination of education, training, and experience that would provide the required knowledge, skills, and abilities is qualifying. So we're talking about, for this position, maybe work or equivalent to a graduation from an accredited four-year college or university, and at least 1 year of professional administrative experience, doing kind of high-level support that Ryan has mentioned. A lot of times what happens is we receive applications, the applicants that are more qualified, that have more years of experience, might have a better chance of getting screened in, simply because they've been in the workforce and they just have that body of experience. But that doesn't mean that people that are kind of fresh out of college aren't considered, can't move forward in the process. So I think the main thing, again, to talk about is the work that you've done and how that is transferable to or relates to the experience. And you definitely want to talk about that in the narrative responses, and then also in response to interview questions later on if you get screened in. So I don't know if I'm precisely answering your question. We would prefer people have a four-year degree or higher. It's not required necessarily, and at least a year of experience would be helpful. And I think it says a year to maybe up to 3 years. But the bottom line is, we just want there to be sort of a demonstration in the application that you could do the work, sort of hit the ground running, more or less. Even if it's not exactly what you've done in the past, that you could learn quickly, that you have the transferable skills.
Thank you, Chet. Ryan, we have a question about the work schedule. Which facility would we work at day to day, and are there remote work options?
Yeah, we're still kind of working through some of that, to be honest. I'm open to remote options. The county has some specific guidelines and rules as it pertains to that. In terms of where the position would be housed, There's a few different potential opportunities, potentially right in our district attorney's office, which is in Redwood City. It would be, that's a primary position, primary place where it likely would be housed. But there's also some talk potentially we are forming what we call a family justice center here in the county, in the city of San Mateo, and it'll be a county facility that brings together kind of victim services and law enforcement and brings them together all in one building. So there could be a potential that we have office space for this individual there as well. So, but again, I think, I'm open to remote schedules. I'm very open-minded when it comes to that kind of stuff, as long as it fits within the parameters of the county guidelines. And again, there are some guidelines with the county about remote work. But likely here in Redwood City, most likely in County Center is most likely the location. But and then in terms of the work week, I think again I have some openness in terms of the schedule. I'm not opposed at all to like a 4-10 schedule where you work 4 days a week, 10 hours a day, but you're off for 3 days a week every week, whether that be, Friday through Sunday or Saturday through Monday. So I'm very open to those types of things. My main goal is, I want employees that work with me to give 100% when they're at work, and when they're off and have that good balance. And so whatever helps them to strike that balance, then that's important to me. And so, it could be a 980 schedule where you work, where you have every other Friday off or every other Monday off. So I'm open to those types of schedules.
Right.
Thank you,
Can I just
Ryan.
interrupt, Shannon?
Sure.
Do you anticipate like there might be evening meetings if somebody's doing a
Yes.
presentation?
Yeah,
So,
that's a great question. Yes. Thank you, Chet. Yes, sometimes there might be, and I would expect that when there are those types of things, right? That you adapt your schedule accordingly to meet those expectations. It's not going to happen very frequently, but there will be some times where, let's say there's a community group or that wants us to do a presentation, and I want you there with me, or perhaps I want this person to do it on their own. Um, you know, so it could require that sometimes. It hasn't happened very frequently, but yes, that could happen from time to time.
Thank you,
thank
Ryan.
you.
Chet, we have a question for you from Baldev in the chat. What is the preferred length of the responses to the supplemental questions?
That's a really great question. When I first applied for a job here, I wrote tons and tons and tons because I'd been working for a long time. And then when I got this job, I'm like, oh my God, the poor screener that read my application. Right. So, we want you to be complete yet concise. So, maybe 3 paragraphs for questions. Sometimes we say no more than 3 pages for the whole group of supplemental. I think you just have to be sort of judicious. In your own thought process about that. Again, we need to understand what you've done and how that relates to the position, but we don't need pages and pages and pages of information necessarily. But you
Right.
don't want to write 2 sentences unless you're the best writer that's ever lived, right? Because it's probably not enough. 8 sentences might be enough, 24 sentences might be enough. I mean, I really think it depends on how good of a writer you are and the work that you've done and how it relates. But, we want it to be concise so that we're not reading volumes of work, but complete enough again so that you're not selling yourself short, so that the screeners can really see, oh, this person has done this kind of work or has the transferable skills to do this kind of work. So, AI can make it pretty concise, but again, it's just not original, and if I start seeing the same sentence over and over and over, those applications are basically going to get screened more carefully, or not carefully, but more critically, I suppose. And a lot of times what I have to do then is go back and look at the body of work. And if those two things don't match up, it's not good. Right. So just take your time again, and then write intelligently, I guess, write concisely yet completely.
Thank you, Chet. Great question. Uh, I don't know if we can share this information, but we have a question in the chat from Emily about who we expect to be on the interview team. So I believe she's referring to the civil service panel interview. Are we able to share that info, Chet?
Yeah, we wouldn't necessarily share names at this point. I mean, obviously there'll be subject matter experts, stakeholders in this. I mean, Ryan, I anticipate you'll be on the panel. It just kind of makes sense. There may be somebody from the DA's office. There probably would be somebody from the community that, again, that has a stake, is a strong stakeholder in this. Maybe someone from law enforcement. Ryan, I don't know if you have any more specifics. Again, we wouldn't share names necessarily at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, no more specifics. I think we're still, kind of working out the details of it, but definitely more than one person. Definitely someone within the county without question. Somebody that has a knowledge base of the actual position and has some experience with that. Outside of that, there is a potential that yes, we may have one of the community partners that would be in some way involved with this as part of the process. And yeah, and potentially someone from the D's. I try not to make it so big with so many people that it just that things get lost in translation. So, probably a group I would say of, maybe no more than 3 to 4 people.
Yeah. Yeah, typically in the county, our civil service interviews, there's 3 panelists, and we do that number, have that number for a couple of reasons. One, in case somebody has to drop off a panel or recuse themselves, or they're asked to be recused, then there's still a couple of people, making decisions about the uh, uh, quality, I guess, or the response to the interview questions. Because this is a newer position with a lot of stakeholders, we could have 4 people on the panel. And I used to, just to share, I used to really think interviews were very adversarial. It was me versus them, and in this case, 4 of them, right? And since I've worked here, that's just not the way to view interviews. It really is a collaborative experience. You're coming to share what you know about yourself, about how you could do this job, about how your work experiences, education have prepared you. And that's what we want to hear you talk about. I mean, if you were out with 4 friends, having dinner and you started talking about your work, it would just roll off your tongue. Please try to think about it that way. We just want to get to know you in a short amount of time. Obviously, it is for strangers probably, but it's not. We just want to find the really the best person for this position, and that's our
Thank
goal
you.
here.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that, Shannon, that what Chip just said. This isn't about just throwing a bunch of questions at somebody. It's really about, like I said, having a conversation, and we want to do everything we can to make that person be comfortable, because obviously we want them to be comfortable enough to really get out the information, because that's what we're looking for. So it's not at all this kind of just, hey, the questions may be timed because we have a number of people we need to interview, but not as timed to just to kind of make it challenging for people. So I always tell people, think about being concise and getting the most important information out. But we also try to do whatever we can to bring down the nervousness level. We know people are going to be nervous going in an interview. And as much as we can bleed that off, we want to, because we really want to just have a conversation and learn about them.
Thank you. Thank you both. Great question. Marissa Chang is asking in the chat, would you share a little bit more about the types of data that some of the 16 law enforcement agencies currently sit with, and what might bringing this data look like? Sorry, I think there may have been a typo in that question.
Yeah. So I can say a lot of the agencies, right? So there are mandated like crime reporting statistics that every agency in the state of California has to report on. And so the framework's already there. They're collecting data about robberies and all this. And they do have to collect. One of the challenges with human trafficking, right, is that human trafficking often hides itself in other crimes. And what I mean by that, like domestic violence, we see this very frequently, where especially in sex trafficking, the woman being trafficked, the trafficker will often beat them. I mean, again, this doesn't, this is the reality, is they will oftentimes use force to ensure that the person being trafficked does what they need him to do. And so it may look like you're just a domestic violence incident, and it actually is a victim of human trafficking, but the human trafficking victim is like, hey, my boyfriend beat me up, right? And oftentimes, without really good training, the officers will miss that. They don't know. They think they're dealing just with a domestic violence incident. So that's one of the challenges. And I say that because it does skew the data, right? Because we're not probably catching all the instances of this, because often, like I said, it hides itself in other types of crimes. And so, having somebody that can help, I getting the training and some of those things will help with that. But then again, having somebody that can review certain cases where, maybe like we've already done some training for our records folks in the county, the folks that process the reports. So maybe they catch something, right? And we can get it out, and maybe this person screens that and says, "Oh, okay, this is a human trafficking case." But the good news is that the data is already out there. It really is just finding a system of taking all that data and integrating it. And the good news is there's a lot of experts in our county that are really good with the data piece of this. So, the goal would be that whoever this person is makes some relationships with some of those people and figures out a way to get the data. But it exists in our computer-aided dispatch systems. It exists in mandated reporting that goes to both the state and the federal government. So, I see that as kind of the easier piece in terms of finding the data. The more challenging piece is organizing it and pulling it all together.
Thank you, Ryan. Sorry about that. I was having trouble finding my mute button. We are going to end with one more question from Alexander in the chat. For those of you that your question we weren't able to get to, perhaps Ryan, I'd like to propose that you revisit the comment section if there's any questions that you could answer. Ryan's super active on LinkedIn, and so maybe you could share your insights on any of those questions. That'd be great. But Alexander in the chat is asking, can you discuss in more detail the opportunities for participating in community-based meetings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the community-based meetings, I see these as like, maybe a local Rotary group, right, that has an interest and wants to learn more about what we're doing about human trafficking in this county. That is an opportunity where you could potentially be working with a community group. It could be a presentation, like I said, for a city council. They want to learn more about what the county is doing about human trafficking, and so it could be speaking in front of a city council and talking about it. It could be a variety of stakeholders, both from government and non-governmental agencies that want to learn about more what we do. It could be presenting in front of the Board of Supervisors, right? It could be at a Board of Supervisors meeting where the Board of Supervisors are looking for an update on our efforts. So that again is another presentation. So that again, the uniqueness of this is, you'll be somewhat, the information's the same, right? But how you present it somewhat might be a little bit different depending on who your audience is. How you present things to the Board of Supervisors is going to be different to how you present things to the Rotary Club that just wants to learn more about what we do and how we're doing it. Information's the same, but the way that you present it is different. So I think there'll be a lot of opportunities in that realm. A lot of different stakeholders in terms of who we present to.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you all so much, Ryan and Chet. Thank you to everyone who joined us today for your thoughtful questions and interest in this impactful work. If you'd like to apply for the Human Trafficking Prevention Analyst position, you can visit our job site, jobs.smcgov.org, and search for the title. We encourage you to submit your application early. So, Chet, can you remind everyone of the final date to apply?
Yeah, the recruitment will close on November 3rd at 11:59 p.m. or midnight, but get your application in before 11:59. Don't wait until the last minute. There's too many questions. So take your time, submit something good. You can answer the questions in Word and then cut and paste them into the application. That's what we recommend.
Good tip.
And yeah, we look forward to receiving your application. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Chet, for some
absolutely.
clarity, oh, sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, no
one
problem.
more question for Chet. There's some comments in the chat asking about whether the interviews are in person or virtual.
I think the interviews will be in person. If somebody's from out of the area, we will try to, accommodate them with a virtual interview, absolutely. But I think first round will most likely be in person as much as we can.
Thank you, Chet. And Ryan, sorry for cutting you off.
Oh, no, I just want to say thank you to everyone, and I wish everyone the best of luck in the process moving forward.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And for everyone, we look forward to seeing your applications come in. We hope that this informational session was insightful and you feel like this position is for you. Thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Ryan.